I'm in business for my personal autonomy, for creativity, for connecting with people I align with, for running ethical businesses that don't lie. Like, I think there was just a lot in the water in that instance that reminded me, like, no, this is the right move. The problem was, as I've explained on the podcast before, is that vacuum of income that went away when that project went away made me feel like I had to go into overdrive and like I had to fix it immediately. Kiss my aesthetics, branding, marketing, entrepreneurship. Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. It is the first podcast of the new year. Welcome. We made it to 2026. Full transparency, by the time I'm recording this, it's still December, but that's okay because I have a lot of exciting updates to share with you. And we're just going to kick off the new year with me retelling my side of the story. You guys have tuned in and listened to so many episodes where we've interviewed clients and experts, solo episodes where I've given you practical advice. But every once in a while, it's nice to just kind of recap how we got to here. So that's what we're planning to do in today's episode. But I have a lot of exciting announcements and structure to share about the podcast that I kind of want to kick us off with, because this is the first year in 5 years, 6 years, 6 years, it'll be in 2026 of running this show, that we actually created a bit of a schedule. Go us. So to kind of kick off this new year, first and foremost, the structure of the podcast is staying mostly the same. You'll get new episodes on Tuesdays, but we are going to do a very organized pattern of every other episode is a guest or a solo. So this episode, first episode of the new year, this is my story. This is a solo episode, as you can predict. The next episode we have coming is with a client of ours. So the second episode of the month will always be a client case study. The third episode of the month will always be a solo. So back to solo. There's going to be some practical advice. There's going to be information about how to work with us. There's going to be my thoughts on improving your process, being a better designer, being a better creative. There's going to be just a really actionable episode on week 3. And then week 4 of every month, we're going to have an interview with an expert. So this is someone within my network, someone I'm curious about, someone who's been referred to us, who has expertise in a particular category that I think will be helpful for all of us. So that's what you have coming in the new year. So again, solo, client, solo, expert interview, and they will be labeled as such. So it should be really easy to find what you're after. So that's the first kind of bit of organization, housekeeping for the pod. The next, which I'm also excited about, is that every quarter we're going to follow a different theme. Dun, 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 dun. Because this is a branding, marketing, and entrepreneurship podcast, I've created themes per quarter based on what I think is going to be most helpful to you at that different time of year. So the theme in January is going to be entrepreneurial. We're going to talk about how to build your business, how to grow your business, how to take care of yourself as a founder. A lot of the solo episodes and the client episodes and guest interviews will be on these entrepreneurial style topics. The second theme for Q2 is going to be based around design. So this will be how to become a better designer, how to make better design decisions, design tools, practical advice, logos, do's and don'ts, designing merch, designing packaging, designing for communities, maybe designing mock-ups. These are some of the solo topics I'm looking to explore in Q2 with our theme around design. And the interviews also will follow a heavier design bend. So we'll have those 3 client interviews that'll happen on the second week of the month. And then we'll have 3 expert interviews where I'm going to talk to other designers, other creators, other people that have a heavy design bend in part of their process to help you, again, in Q2, really focus about design. In Q3, because everyone should be planning all of their holiday promotions by Q3. So that's July, August, September. So when you need to be thinking about that, we're going to talk about marketing. So we'll talk a lot about auditing your efforts, finding ways to up-level your marketing, creating client touchpoint maps, ethical and authentic marketing, campaign SOPs, and deliverable ideas to really up the ante on how your brand shows up in a marketing capacity. On the client interview side, the interviews will have a heavy marketing influence in the questions and in the subject matter. And on the expert side, I'm going to talk to marketing experts that have a really good understanding of positioning and a really good understanding of culture and a really good understanding of all the different platforms that we can be sharing on to make the max impact for your bottom line and for your business. So Q3 theme is going to be marketing. And then to round it all out, we'll come back around Q4 back to entrepreneurship. So I want us to think about you versus your business, how you can keep evolving as a learner, how to avoid burnout at the end of the year, coming up with a founder schedule, setting boundaries, defining your legacy or lifestyle business, and then all of those subsequent client and network expert interviews will have that entrepreneurial theme yet again. So we will do entrepreneurship, Q1, design, Q2, marketing, Q3, and back to entrepreneurship, Q4. And I'm really excited that we have some freaking structure to this because it was really me versus me on that. The podcast has evolved so much, and I'm going to share that in this episode and kind of chart that along the growth of MKW Creative Co. But the point of this episode is really to give you that zoom out of back to baby me 12 years ago starting this business to where we are now to where we're going. Again, as the host, sometimes I find that I'm talking so much to so many different people and we get little glimpses of my backstory, but having an episode dedicated to it to kick off the year just felt like the right thing to do. So without further ado, I'm going to get into my story. Hi, welcome, story time. So if you haven't met me yet, maybe somehow this is the first episode you've ever clicked on of the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. My name's Michelle. I'm the owner, founder, creative director of MKW Creative Co, where we build brag-worthy brands for people who want to help their communities. And that's kind of been the extra tag on to our brand mission statement heading into 2026 is really making sure that we are aligning ourselves with founders who have an invested interest in community. All of our best clients this year had that, and it just feels right as an extension of the brag-worthy design side of things, that design is brag-worthy with the intention of helping community. So if we rewind the clock all the way back to the beginning, I started my business kind of on accident. And what I mean by that is I didn't really know I wanted to be a business owner as a young person, but I kind of always knew that I was going to do something creative. Since I was a child, like I loved finding ways to make things and then gift them or sell them to people. I loved a theme. I loved a birthday party, invite list, and an invitation suite, and having things for my friends to do activities at my birthday party since I was like 8 years old. This has always been something that I've loved, which is a lot of world building looking back. I went to college at the University of San Diego, where I studied fine arts and art history. And in those two majors, really got to understand art theory, got to understand critique, design critique, which is such a great skin thickening skill to have. But it reminded me that there's this big gap between creative and between business. And one of my biggest kind of gripes with my university education is I feel like I didn't get to learn anything about business by being there. Thankfully, I have a family of entrepreneurs. My mom started her own business when I was about 10. My grandmother had her own business. My aunt has her own business. My great grandmother had her own business. My sister has her own business. And now my youngest sister has just started her own business. There are a lot of female business owners in this family. And I always had that support and big asterisk privilege that my parents recommended to me and gave me permission to pursue the things I was interested in. And the philosophy in our house was be a good person, do a good job, and everything else sorts itself out. But it's also worth the try. So if you can find a way to do what you like to do and get paid for it, then all the better. So to kind of, again, rewind to my college career, my junior year, I was looking for an on-campus job. I wanted to be able to do something between classes. At the time, I was also a part-time nanny in the area, but I really wanted to do something creative. And at the University of San Diego, you are somewhat limited on what jobs you can take up. And one of the things you could do that was an actual skills-based job was work at the Creative Zone. So my best friend and I applied for this job at the Creative Zone, which was a graphic design position. I had probably little to no experience with Adobe Illustrator, but I got access to the Adobe Creative Suite via that job and also had YouTube and Google at my disposal. So I was the kind of person that I knew the type of graphics that I wanted to make, but I didn't know how to make them. So I would sit there side by side following tutorials from YouTube of how to make a pointillism inspired poster, how to create a cupcake graphic. And I can think back to creating those original posters and flyers. This was the place where on campus clubs and organizations could get graphic design and promotion for free. So they would come in, they would give us a creative brief, we would have a schedule on the board, who was working on what, delivered by when. And then we'd get a chance to design the work and get feedback. And that job was really what prompted me to start posting on social media. So I started sharing kind of what I was designing via this job. I think we got paid a stipend of like $500 for the entire semester. So it's like minimal money income wise, but it gave me a chance to learn the skills. So from there, same said best friend gave me a version of jailbroken Adobe Illustrator on a CD-ROM, if you can believe it, that I plugged into my laptop and used with half the buttons broken for that whole semester, because she's like, let's not bother ourselves with going into the computer lab. Like, I have this Adobe Illustrator, you can just download it on your computer. I was like, okay, works for me. So we kind of would go back and forth within that and be designing kind of in tandem with each other. And I had started showing my parents, like, oh, look, I made this, I made this, I made this. And they're like, wow, this is like not half bad. You should start a business. I was like, okay, what do you mean I should start a business? Like, I don't know what that looks like. She goes, start an Instagram account, start an email. And I was like, all right. So I made an email account, MKW Graphics at the time, mkwgraphics@gmail.com. I made an Instagram, MKW Graphics. I used a logo that I made in class, in my design foundations class, as my first logo. And it was like gray, which is, looking back, so silly. But to me, those first few clients that I had really kind of scratched an itch that I didn't know I had either. So my parents had kind of referred me via their networks. Hey, here's our daughter. She's doing graphic design. I was like, what do I charge? They said, charge more than you would babysitting. So babysitting, I was making $12 an hour. So I charged everyone $15 an hour because I was a student to make them anything they wanted. You want a business card? I'll make it. You want a t-shirt, a poster, a flyer? I'll make it. I'll figure it out. My first paying client from that was a company called Premier Inflatables, which sold inflatable play structures for kids' birthday parties. And they needed a flyer. And so I got to work on this and create the flyer for them and then send my very first invoice 0001. And had to ask my parents, how do I send an invoice? How do I let them get me paid? Like, how do I deposit a check? Because I hadn't done that before, besides babysitting, right? So I kind of figured out, like, okay, maybe I do like this. And when I graduated a few months later, my parents, again, kind of were like, well, give it a try. If it sucks, go get a real job. So they kind of gave me this swift kick in the pants, like, try it for a while and then see how it goes, see if you like it. So I moved back home after graduation. Again, privilege, I'll call it out right there, being able to live at home and get the mentorship from my parents through those first couple months of owning a business. But I found out I really liked working for myself. I really liked having my schedule to myself. I really liked having autonomy. I really liked being able to work from coffee shops and work from my laptop, work from bed if I wanted to. So I was pretty hooked on the lifestyle pretty early. From there, I landed a few other clients that took me on in like a much higher capacity. So one of those early clients was a health brand called The 30 Clean. I was helping them with all of their infographics and social posts, and they were really, really, really overdue for a rebrand. And I kind of pitched them like, hey, could I try redesigning your logo? And they didn't really particularly ask for me to redesign their logo, but I said, hey, listen, I really think I could do this and I want to give it a try. I charged $300 for this logo. And I said, I really feel like my art history background could help me in redesigning this for you. So I spent like 2 weeks doing like deep research, redesigning, creating all the mock-ups, all of the new kind of like layouts for how this was going to come together. And I presented it to them in person. So I invited them to my mom's showroom. I put it on the TV. I went through the slides and I said, here's what you have, and here's where I think you could go with this. What do you think? And they were like gobsmacked, like jaws on the floor. And I just remember being like, oh, now I'm really on something. Like I really, really, really like branding. And at this time, I'm probably 22 years old. So I started kind of going on a deep rabbit hole research for what branding actually means. So at the time was listening to a ton of podcasts, How I Built This, Jenna Kutcher, Chris Do of The Future, was really starting to dip my toe in that world. And again, continuing to share it on social media. Fast forward to probably December of that year. And one of my bigger probably insecurities was I felt like I didn't have any coworkers. So I joined networking groups and I started joining networking groups in the area, introducing myself. I had my business card. I was sprightly. I had a sparkle in my eye. I was 22, 23 years old. And I got connected with these guys that owned a marketing agency in Encinitas. So this is Beacons Point. And they kind of took me under their wing for help with branding specifically. And they had approached me and said, listen, we are just two guys. We're best friends that started this company together. And we really feel like we'd benefit from having some women on our team. Like, would you come help us? And I was so flattered because I like looked up to them. They're only a few years older than me. They were starting an agency. I ended up doing a lot of white label design through them. And what I learned through them was what it looks like to build an actual branding presentation and to build a brand worth a couple $1,000s. Whereas I was only charging probably $400, $500, $600 for a logo and just like turning over a logo or a logo, like a style guide, one pager. What I learned through them is how to take those ideas and then really double down on mock-ups and really create a presentation that was compelling. So I was able to work really closely with them across a lot of different projects in a lot of different industries I hadn't touched before, which were like finance and community-based, City of San Marcos. We worked on projects for nonprofits like Mission Edge Finance. And what I loved about that dynamic was being able to, again, kind of like learn by doing. And I think that formed a lot of my early understanding of brand presentation. That kind of lasted until 2017, 2018. At the time, my same best friend from college, she was doing her master's program in London. She invited me to come visit her when she finished her program. And I kind of had this light bulb of like, oh, well, maybe I can just like work and travel at the same time. I'm a huge travel person. I love traveling. And I realized that when you're in Europe, the time zones for California work in your favor because your whole morning you have to yourself. And then your work day is starting at like 3 p.m. So I went and traveled with her, was able to work while we did it. And I felt like ding, 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 like, hello, this is what I need to be doing. Came back from that trip. I have what I call like my series of unfortunate events, which is I totaled my car, not planned. We put my childhood dog down and I got in like a huge friendship breakup with someone else. And that really kind of prompted me to like, you know what? I've lived in San Diego my whole life. I went to college here. I can really do this from anywhere. So I'm going to take the show on the road. So again, this is 2017. Yeah, 2017. I found a group called Wi-Fi Tribe via a Facebook ad after looking at Remote Year. So Remote Year was an opportunity to travel the world with 75 different people for an entire year. And I was intrigued, but I was like, I don't know if I can commit to doing that for a year. Like, I like to be home for the holidays. I want to see my family. I don't necessarily want to commit to being gone for a whole year. So I got the ad for Wi-Fi Tribe. And Wi-Fi Tribe is basically like your resident assistant abroad. So they secure your housing for you. They find you roommates. And then you can go live with them in all these different countries. And you have this kind of like built-in community, built-in co-working. So I decided this would have been May, April 2017. Like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to Costa Rica. My parents had just gone. They loved it. I was like, okay, yep, I'm going to do it. And then in Costa Rica trip, I was kind of in their Slack channel, like trying to find a roommate. Found this girl, Lauren, Girl Gone Abroad, who had at the time 11,000 followers. And I was like, oh my God, my roommate is famous. This is amazing. And we absolutely just like hit it off. We got to Costa Rica. We were there for 6 weeks. There were 15 of us. We would work during the day and then be out surfing and riding ATVs and going to volcanoes and doing all kind of stuff at night. And on the weekends, what I learned really quickly is not only was like the youngest one there by at least like I think 5 years. There's maybe one person that was within that range with me, but I was also one of the only ones that had my own business. And I remember like being in Costa Rica, typing out my 3 years of being in business blog and like what I had learned and like thought I was like really knowing what I was doing. Like I was so bitching because I was like in Costa Rica by myself at 23 with a bunch of strangers. But at that time, they were even predicting that 33% of the American workforce was going to be able to work remotely. And that was in 2017. They were predicting that by 2030 because there were already trends of online entrepreneurship, remote work happening back then. So that Costa Rica trip, I had just the time of my life. I left that trip, immediately booked Cape Town for the following January with my same roommate, with Lauren, and was hooked. And so I tried to figure out, okay, if I don't have an apartment in San Diego, how can I travel for the same or less cost than I would pay in rent? And how can I get enough projects that then sustain me so that I can keep going on these trips? So I would go to Costa Rica, then I came home and I actually lived in Tahoe for a while. I lived in San Diego at my parents' house, and then I would like go back out. So then I went back out. I did the Cape Town trip and had a freaking blast in Cape Town, South Africa. Came home, same thing, lived at home again, went back out to Croatia, went to Lisbon, went kind of like all over. And at this time, the business was doing well enough because I had built a following for myself on social media. I was starting to connect with clients that had brands all over the world and was just continuing to find ways to grow kind of through the not only the networks but through like the podcasting and the different opportunities to build my knowledge base, which was so hugely helpful in that time of my life. Then kind of fast forward to was home through the holidays. Fast forward to I went to Southeast Asia at the beginning of 2018 or 2019. Yeah, because that would have been 2018. And then 2019, I was in Bali. I really was into the branding idea. And I was like, you know what? All these graphic design projects, they're great and all, but like I really love branding and I really feel like I just want to niche in on branding. And the issue with my current positioning was that I was MKW Graphics. And MKW Graphics, I think, communicated to people that I was just a graphic designer when really I wanted to be known as a brand strategist and a brand designer. So the first week of being in Bali, walked into the co-working space because I'd been following them on social media for a while. I knew they allowed public speaking. I said, hi, I'd like to give a presentation. And they were like, great. Do you have a topic? I was like, yeah, why your logo sucks. So the presentation was called Why Your Logo Sucks and What to Do About It. And in the presentation, I was breaking down all the things I'd learned about branding and logos. And at the end, I critiqued my own branding and why my branding wasn't resonating with my audience, why my logo wasn't working for my business. And I basically like unveiled my new logo at this networking event. That kicked off and prompted the name change as well. And during this time, I had also been starting up the series called Design Live. So I needed a way to continue to talk to people that I admired, like people I looked up to in my industry. So I had started kind of casually what I called Design Live, which is my interview series, interviewing other designers on how they became a designer, what they learned. And for me, it was just literally a networking hack, like an absolute, hey, will you come on my live show? I'd love to interview you. And we used to do the first 30 minutes on Instagram, and then we would take the second 30 minutes into the Facebook group, the Kiss My Aesthetic Facebook group. So we had kind of this dual purpose of kind of content interview style with other people, again, other professionals, other travel people, clients of mine, and was sharing that this whole time. So it's February 2019. I have announced we're MKW Creative Co now. I changed over the brand, colors, styles, fonts, etc. during this time that I was in Bali. And then at the same time was kicking up Design Live. And it wasn't until a few months into that, that one of my friends from traveling, Berta Wired, producer of this podcast, really came to me and said, this should really be a podcast. Like this Design Live thing, like really deserves to be a podcast. I was like, I'm not making a podcast. This is a visual medium. Like I'm a visual person. You have to be able to see what I'm talking about. She goes, yeah, but the problem with your Design Live is that it's like, it goes away. Like the whole thing goes away as soon as you're done. And I feel like you'd get a lot more value out of recording it. So I was like, all right. So I became her very first podcast production client. So that was way back in 2020 is when we officially launched the podcast. That was the first episode is June 8th, 2020. So it took us some time to get there, to work up to it. But she really was pitching me that idea in 2019. Through 2019, I kind of was traveling and trying to sort myself out and figuring out like where I wanted to live, the kind of business I wanted to have. And I think prior to my whole like digital nomad era, I really wanted in my younger 20s, like the big shiny office with my logo on the door and a whole army of, I remember saying to a friend, like, oh, one day my office will be there and I'll have this whole army of employees working for me and I'm going to build this giant empire and I'm going to have locations in different countries, like a London office and a New York office and an LA office. And I like had these crazy big ambitions. And I think not to discredit that, but I think what that was in hindsight was like my eyes were bigger than my stomach. Like I really thought I needed that to prove that I was legitimate enough. Like before I really got comfortable in my business, like the biggest compliment to me was somebody seeing something that I'd made and them saying, oh my gosh, this is so good. I had no idea you did it. And I was like, good. Like I thought that was the highest of compliments because I was like insecure about being young or like being inexperienced. And so if someone perceived what I had made to be quality, that to me was like the highest form of compliment, which was definitely coming from like a place of insecurity. And it wasn't until I kind of got some years under my belt and some projects under my belt that I felt a little more comfortable kind of saying like, yeah, I made this and it's awesome. I made this and it's working. I made this and I can do that for you too. And that kind of shift and kind of stepping up into the rebrand of it all really helped me. So we went from MKW Graphics to MKW Creative Co. And then with that transition, started taking the content marketing more seriously, evolving into the podcast, the Facebook group. At this point, I'm starting to post on TikTok. My brand design in 60 seconds videos are starting to take off. And by the end of 2019, I went through like a pretty crazy breakup, which then landed me back in California at my parents' house at the ripe age of 26. And I said, you know what? I really feel like in 2020, I really have so much work now that I can't do it all myself. And I'm missing deadlines and I'm overwhelmed by the admin. And I feel like I can't get a good grip of what I'm doing and who I'm helping. And I need help. Like I can't do this all myself. So in 2020 is when I decided, January 2020, I was like, this year I'm going to build my team. I'm really going to focus on like hiring qualified, wonderful people who can help work with me to grow this thing. And the timing couldn't have been better because 2 months later, the whole world shut down. So as we know, the pandemic happened. And in that year, as I put in my Trend Report podcast, entrepreneurship was like the thing. Either you got laid off from your job and you had no other choice, or you finally had all this extra time on your hand because you couldn't do anything social to actually realize this side hustle or business dream that you wanted. And in that year, this is the same time that the videos on TikTok were racking up 150, 200, 300,000 views. We did 41 brand designs that year, which is both symptom of me not charging enough, but also not having a social life, having no work-life balance, and just overcommitting, saying yes to everything, saying yes to every single project. And it was like both a rush and both terrifying that I like let myself do that, because it basically got to the point where that then got me the opportunities that I now get today, 6 years later, like building that portfolio, deciding on our niche, figuring out what we were good at, learning along the way, learning by doing those 41 brands. Like granted, a lot of them probably don't exist as companies anymore because they were kind of this COVID fever dream, but some of them that we designed are still sustaining. Like that era is when I landed Hotel Lobby Candle, like one of the goats of our portfolio. It's when I connected with Jet Set Christina. It's when we did the branding for a lot of the brands that are still kind of those hallmarks of our portfolio was from that era. So that kind of morphs us into 2021. And in 2021 is when I really felt like, okay, now I'm getting the right people in places that are helping build the business. And one of the first things I wanted to outsource was the CRM, the intake of it all, the invoices, the contracts, the proposals. That part of my process slowed me down so much. So from a referral from a copywriter, I got to know Cody OBM. She came on first and foremost to build our Dubsado. And Dubsado was everything because it allowed us to have a centralized portal for clients to select the package that they want, immediately sign the contract, and immediately pay the invoice. So having that outsourced to someone who owned that whole top to bottom, process was huge. So Cody came on, built the Dubsado, and then at the end of the handoff, I said, "Can I just hire you to run this thing? Because I love this system, this machine that you built, but like, can you just also maintain it?" So she stuck on for retainer starting then. This is also the time period where I was hosting through the pandemic and into 2021 the Kiss My Portfolio Challenge, which is another throwback. So the Kiss My Portfolio Challenge was kind of my answer to people wanting me to make a digital course. I don't have the patience and or the focus to sit down and create an entire course because my fear is by the time I create a course, all the information would then be outdated. So instead, I hosted challenges. So the very first Kiss My Portfolio challenge I hosted in early COVID, which was I gave a prompt for a fictitious business. And then every day for 10 days, and at the time, I think it was like 30 days, it was like way too much. But I gave the prompt of what you should have been working on in order to design that as a brand. So we hosted the Kiss My Portfolio Challenge through the Kiss My Aesthetic Facebook group. This is the same time the podcast is happening. And basically, every single prompt day, designers would submit their work for feedback. The first Kiss My Portfolio Challenge that I hosted had 248 designers enrolled. And it was free. It was like free to join. Again, this is COVID. We have no social life. There's no work life balance. I'm like, yeah, I can do this and design 41 brands at the same time. No problem. So this is going to all lead up to kind of, you can see where this is going. The first challenge was amazing. And there was one designer that really stuck out to me. And then I hosted another challenge, this time paid and for only 50 people. The same designer was showing up and doing amazing work. Then the third challenge, I really noticed, I was like, wow, there's some real consistent people coming through here that are very talented. And by the third and fourth challenge, I realized like, oh, I can now lean on this network that I've built from the podcast to come in and be guest judges to like lessen the burden on my feedback, get more diverse feedback, and allow those people to have opportunities to come in like a reality television show and judge something. And what I noticed after each time of these challenges was the ones that particularly exceeded in doing these challenges were the ones that actually used those portfolio pieces on their social media and were sharing it and tagging me and taking feedback and always on time. And that person that rose to kind of the cream of the crop was Madison. Madison Eats Cake, who is on our team. So by the end of I think the fourth challenge that she took with us, I sent her a message and I was like, listen, you are extremely talented and I've loved every single piece of work you put forward. Would you be interested in coming on and helping out on MKW Creative Co? And she's like, are you kidding? Like, of course. So then Madison was added onto the team. And Madison was working with us so often that we finally got to the point with our revenue and with our project load to bring her on as my first full-time employee. So that happened in 2022, so the following year. So all this said, this crazy amount of work led us to this huge portfolio. The huge portfolio brought us new opportunities. And one of those opportunities was tied to one specific entrepreneur. And that entrepreneur owned about 7 businesses at the time, who he just said, here, you take it. I want you guys to run it. So I made, in hindsight, the mistake of putting all my eggs in that basket. And I was like, oh, amazing. Like, we have this huge client with this huge workload and a huge budget. This is going to help me finance the rest of my team. This is going to help me bring on Gabby and Jimmy and Julianne and all these other people that were helping to support the business. And those projects went well for a while until they didn't, until it got to the point where we felt like our boundaries were being crossed. We felt like our contract wasn't being honored. And we felt like, okay, we've got to diversify beyond this one avenue. because we don't really see this going well, right? So by September 2023 is when we kind of hit our breaking point. And I remember being at the time, my sister is really popping off with her destination wedding planning business. So I'm able to travel with her during that time. I'm in Italy, sitting in the hotel room in this like full blown kind of fight isn't really what I would call it. I'd say like very strongly worded meeting with the project manager from all of these ventures, and I remember being there being like, I'm so done. Like I'm so over it. I'm so cooked. Like this is relationship is beyond repair. And I called an emergency meeting with my team and I looked at everybody. I said, raise your hand if you want to quit. And everybody went, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So to me, that really validated that like what I was feeling was real. And like, okay, we need to find a way to move on from this huge contract. And like, I'm talking huge contract. Like, I don't think I'll ever see money. Well, I don't want to say, I don't want to manifest that, but that contract really pushed things to a new level for our business. So letting go of that and telling them like, hey, your contract is going to be terminated by October 15th. This is your 15-day or your 30-day warning was terrifying because I felt responsible and I felt like this was a personality move and not a business move. And maybe if I had been tougher or if I just shut up and kind of taken it, like we could have kept it. But then I had to remind myself, like, that's not why I'm in business in the first place. Like, I'm in business for my personal autonomy, for creativity, for connecting with people I align with, for running ethical businesses that don't lie. Like, I think there was just a lot in the water in that instance that reminded me, like, no, this is the right move. The problem was, as I've explained on the podcast before, is that vacuum of income that went away when that project went away made me feel like I had to go into overdrive and like I had to fix it immediately. So I looked at my whole team and I said, everything you were doing for those clients, you now do for me. You all are going to help me blow this up, and blow it up we did. I mean, I had help with social media posting. We had better website. We had better graphics. We had invested all this money in photo and video. We had the podcast doing great. Like everything was really kind of on the up and up, but it's because I didn't have any balance. And I felt like, oh, I've now spent the last year and a half not networking, not diversifying my spheres of influence, not reaching out to people, not growing beyond this one opportunity because I had really just kind of parked myself in that camp. And I think what I tried so desperately to fix by 2024, like beginning of 2024, was like, it's fine. I'll just not sleep. I'll just overwork. I'll just over deliver because I was so afraid to like lose these team members that I really loved and really wanted to keep working with and who I know were so talented. And so as the only person who's the only sales generator of the business, I was like, you know what? This is my responsibility. Like I need to go find us our next projects. And I just went into absolute overdrive, like absolute overcompensating, absolute overdrive, absolute like obsession with the idea of getting more projects and to like keep wanting to make more money every year. And I think a lot of us can probably relate to that, right? If you're an eldest daughter, if you're an overachiever, if you're an ADHD type entrepreneur, like you want to constantly show improvement. You want to constantly beat your own record. You want to constantly PR. So it's like, why would I not want to do that? And to me, not having any corporate experience, not having any like real, I hadn't had a decade of life in this business. I didn't understand that like it's okay to plateau. Like it's okay to even have a year where you make less money than the year before. And I just don't think I gave myself any permission to do that. So I really like overdid it. And I'm so thankful to my parents and to my family and my close friends for being like, you are clearly not okay. Like you clearly need to like get your shit together. And they kind of yanked me and yanked the phone out of my hand and the computer from my desk and said, maybe give yourself a break. And it wasn't until I really kind of hit the point of this is not going to go well that that I realized like, okay, yeah, you're right. Like, and I do need help and I do need intervention. And I think it's hard when you like live alone and you run your own business. There's a lot of unseen pressure of like being a good boss, being a good designer, being a good partner for these businesses, like making sure the businesses are successful. And I think I put a lot of burden of the success of the businesses that we worked with on myself, when there's so many other factors that play into whether a business is good or not, right? Like there's so many other things. So I really struggled to find that balance between where do I see myself as a partner and as a colleague with these clients, and where am I really just coming in to do a job, hand off the assets, and move on. So that was kind of the biggest realization I think in the last few years, and that was again 2024. So I'm so thankful to my team, because in that instance I was able to reach out to them and say, like, guys, I'm not good, like I need help. I need help, and I need to figure out how we do this differently and better. And it was during this time that we had a branding project, unfortunately, that went so upside down, backwards, and sideways, where the client was an asshole and screaming at me, screaming profanities at me on the phone. And what I'd realized is we'd kind of lost touch of the why and the who that we work for. So it was a lot of, come to Jesus, a lot of like reflection and listening and figuring out, like, okay, who is it that we want to work with? Like, who are those people that are aligned? Who are the people that don't just have the budget, but like have the mission and the vision, all the stuff that I always talk about on the podcast. And it's this theme that's the difference between intellectually knowing something and emotionally feeling something. And it wasn't until we kind of started to break down, like, how do we emotionally feel tied to the success of these projects or the success of these clients? And that then became the driver. And also for me, it was relinquishing control, like telling people when I needed help, telling people when I needed support, just letting people do work that I didn't have to be involved in, letting team members meet with each other, letting team members meet with clients that I didn't have to be involved in, so that I could stay in my best creative zone. So 2024 was about resetting boundaries, resetting rules for myself. Like, the laptop's got to be closed at 9:30 p.m., no exceptions. I've got to get a workout in every day, no exceptions. I've got to start investing in therapy and investing in my mental health, no exceptions. Because what I realized is, like, running my own business and living alone is like, no one was going to put the brakes on, like, except for me. And so when I was losing the wheels were coming off, basically, that's what I couldn't stop. And a lot of that is like a brain chemistry type deal, and like having a more ADHD, like kind of addictive validation kind of personality is falling into that. So I hope that resonates with somebody. Is like, maybe you guys sense that through the content or through the podcast. And I've been pretty vulnerable about that with the podcast. But I think, again, 2024, that was like a huge lesson. So rounding out 2024 was really about finding the right partnerships and clients. And also, shout out to Cody, helping me know my numbers, because I was a person, and Cody will laugh at this, because I tell her, I was like, I'm running this business on vibes. Like, I'm running money on vibes. Like, I know there's cash in the cash account, but like, I'm not looking at the books. I'm not looking at the bookkeeping. I'm not looking at the in and out. I'm not looking at the costs and the expenditures. And having an employee is expensive, and paying for healthcare is expensive, and being able to have a contract team is expensive. And then on top of that, making sure that I'm getting paid, and that I'm getting paid proportionate to my effort in the business. So having her help and having the finance team help to really outline, okay, this is your threshold, these are your costs, this is what it takes to run the podcast. Like, the podcast is expensive. Having the podcast editor and the YouTube manager and the show notes and the blogs, like, that all adds up. So it was really about thinking, how can we be smart about this? And how can we know our numbers so that we know what our go get is? Because if I know my go get, like, I know what money to bring in every month, I can really focus on that as being the sales generator of the business. Blah, blah, blah. Fast forward. We now are at a place where we've got incredible retainers, and we have incredible clients, and we've got branding projects that are super aligned, and that we've also changed the structure of what we offer. So we used to just offer branding at 2 different price points, and then creative direction retainer. And what we did in 2025 that we're going to stick with, that I think is really helpful, is branding projects that then turn into brand launch projects that then turn into creative direction retainer. So a lot of times, like, we'll finish the branding, hand it off, and people don't know what to do with it. And so we are able to come up with this scope of work that says, like, this is how this all gets rolled out. And we will be your partner, we'll be your guide, we'll hold your hand through that process until you're ready to either take it over on your own or take us on in like a month-to-month capacity and really work through that together. So that was kind of the 2025. The other big lesson of 2025 and 2024. So like end of 2024, I was traveling a lot more, like doing some solo travel, some reflection. I was in London for about 3 weeks by myself. And this was also around the time of the election. And I definitely was a person that got really into the politics of it all and started to feel really insecure about my role as a designer participating in late stage capitalism and feeling like I could be doing something so much better with my time, and was really kind of on this like self-pity spiral end of 2024. And I think that reflected in like how I showed up. I think me not believing in what I was doing and not believing in how I was doing it or who we were working with showed up in how I didn't really network and I didn't put myself out there, and I fell off with the consistency of the social media and the Facebook group. Thank God for the podcast because that still ran the whole time. But there's kind of the after effects of that, and what we've learned coming into 2025 is that our sales timeline for big projects that have budgets of 20,000 and above, that's like 6 to 8 month engagement. The client hears about us. Maybe we have a discovery call, we follow up, we give them space, we talk to them again, we send a proposal, they're not ready, da 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 da. Like we're noticing that that's just a much longer decision timeline because it's a heftier amount of money. It's a much bigger difference to invest $20,000 versus 2,000. So in knowing that now, in hindsight, the conversations that I have now are the projects that are going to materialize in Q3 and 4. So because I wasn't doing that at the end of 2024, we had this dip in our revenue in Q1 and Q2. And I wouldn't even say that that's 100% my fault, right? I talked about this in the trend report. It's like tariffs and new administration and legislation and algorithm changes and social media is being bought up by billionaires. Like there were a lot of things in the water in early 2025 that I think made business ownership really scary. It made entrepreneurship really scary, and a lot of small businesses had to close because of it. So the best thing that we did during that time was look at our clients and say, how can we make this work for you? What is your budget? What is your top line? Like, what is your baseline? I know I can commit to this, and then let us tell you what we can meet you at for that level. And that served us really well with our retainer clients. That served us really well to have those conversations, to be candid, to talk to them about how it's not just about putting your eggs in any one basket for marketing, but it's about doing print and digital and social and events and because we have to safeguard ourselves from any of these branches like kind of falling off. So it was a lot of like renegotiating and reevaluating what was working and wasn't working. But I think what we did in that instance is we gave the clients a chance to trust us that we were there to work with them, and that by working with them, we were going to help them grow. So that to me really stands out as a good moment for our team, but there wasn't the revenue really to help push that back up. So it also became a thing of when I don't feel like I'm good at my job, I want to do the things that are more the entry level work, I guess. I find myself like when I'm not good at the high level, the networking, the putting myself out there, the chit chatting with people and the signing of new jobs, I'm like, well, at least I can design these social posts and that feels productive. That feels like I'm contributing something to this business because I don't feel like I'm good at my day job. And so I'm going to then go in and help my team. And the feedback I got from my team, and good for them for giving it to me, was like, stop doing our jobs on top of us. Like, let us do our job. You have a different job. Go do your job. And they were 100% right. They were so right about that because I needed the reminder that like the work for me doesn't necessarily mean sitting in front of my computer. And when I was a solo entrepreneur, it did. When I was solo, my work started when I opened my laptop and popped open Adobe Illustrator or opened Canva. Now the work looks different. The work for me is talking to people, is recording this podcast, is going out and networking and traveling and talking to people and putting in FaceTime with clients and doing client site visits. That is the work. And it's a mindset shift that I think took me a long time to come around to because it didn't feel like work. It felt like the stuff that supports the work. So that again has been kind of a big shift in 2025 that I'm looking to take into 2026 is like, I can't I can't call myself the owner, founder, creative director if I'm doing the entry level stuff. If I'm doing the day-to-day graphic, or even not even entry level, if I'm doing the senior graphic designer stuff, if I'm doing this social media manager stuff, then I'm not doing my job. Nobody else is going to step up and do my job if I'm not doing my job. So again, that was major shout out to my team for like having the balls to be like, get out of our shit. Like, we know what we're doing. Go do the job that you're supposed to be doing, because they were right. So all that to say, I think this gives a lot of context to how and why we run the business that we do. And for anyone listening that's also an agency owner, a designer, a creative, I hope this gave you some hope that a lot of things can happen concurrently. Like, you can have great things happen and you can be like very much humbled by what's happening at the same time. In my family, we call it everything's a blessing or a lesson. So everything that happens to you is either a blessing or it's a lesson. And those two things are the drivers for how you move forward, right? Like, it was a huge lesson that I learned at the end of 2023. It was a huge lesson that I learned in 2020, a huge lesson I learned again in 2024. And it's crazy that the longer you do this business and the longer you have your own business, it's new level, new devil, right? Like, every time you think you've mastered something, you get humbled yet again by either circumstances within your control or completely out of your control. But I'm still in it for the love of the game. Like, I still genuinely love what I do. I still genuinely don't see myself doing anything else. And I'm really grateful that we've been able to attract team members and clients that are aligned in those things. And that's kind of my gratitude sign off, I guess, of this episode, is to keep going in the direction of the people and the projects and the places that make us feel like it's all worth it. And with that, that's the first episode of 2026. I know that was a doozy, and I don't record these kind of like my story episodes all that often. So if you're somehow new to the show, new to me, new to the podcast, the YouTube channel, I hope that was a useful recap, because a lot can happen in 12 years. And I can't believe it's our 12th year, because that doesn't feel real at all. I feel like it's still year 4, but here we are. So thanks so much for listening. If you love this episode, please save it, send it, share it to a friend. Make sure you follow us on YouTube and anywhere you listen to podcasts. We'd love to get your messages in the DMs. I would love to see your messages in the DMs if this episode resonated with you in any way, shape, or form. Don't forget, there's a comment section on Spotify too, and in YouTube. So all the places. We also are reviving the email newsletter this year. So if you're not on the email newsletter, please go to mkwcreative.co. You will get the reminder when the episodes go live. You'll get the links to recent blogs, recent projects, lessons, letters from me. And we're excited to have some actual consistency and formatting strategy for not only the podcast, but the email newsletter and everything else that we're sharing on social into 2026. Thanks for being here. Talk to you soon. Bye.